So we are here with Dr. Ruth Lanius, psychiatrist, researcher, clinician, and a fellow of the Western University of Ontario. And I want to welcome Dr. Ruth Lanius. And I would like to ask you, Ruth, hi, welcome.
Hi, Enrique. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for giving us this time. And I want to invite you to share your experience about what is deep brain reorienting and how did you discover deep brain reorienting?
All right. Well, deep brain reorienting is something very exciting for me and actually my whole research group. And I first learned about DBR, or deep brain reorienting, from Frank Corrigan. I think it was about a year or two before the pandemic started. And Frank told me what deep brain reorienting was clinically and what he postulated to the brain to do during DBR. And so he explained to me that it was a very sequenced approach where you bring up a trigger or a memory. And the first thing whenever we're exposed to a trigger or a stressor is that we orient towards or away from it. And when we orient towards or away from a trigger, that experiences or leads to the experience of neck and head tension because we turn our head. And so that's associated with head and neck tension. And, this is controlled by a structure in the brain called the superior colliculus, very deep within the survival brain, so much lower than the amygdala, actually. And so the first response to a stressor or a trauma is that we orient towards or away from it. And that's associated with an orienting tension. And Frank proposed that this orienting tension was really important because that's what could anchor us in our bodies while we process the trauma. And after the orienting response, the next response that we often have, not always, but often have to a trauma is a shock response. So this before, something awful happens, and that's a shock response. And, Frank outlined how the trauma field, and I totally agree with this, hasn't really thought about the shock responses. And Frank hypothesized that if we don't process the shock response, processing the emotions is not going to be as effective. And so after getting the individual to, anchor in their orienting tension, which facilitates embodiment throughout the treatment, then we help them to process the shock, which is often manifested by tension behind the eyes, tension in the shoulders from this response, as well as a hollowing throughout the whole body. And we just ask the person to sit with that tension while they're anchored in the head and neck tension. So just allow the space to be with that shock response while always being anchored in the body through the head and neck tension. And then once they process the shock response, then we invite them to really pay attention to the visceral emotions they feel in their body related to the trigger or the memory. And again, we allow them to hang out with those visceral emotions until there's sort of an end to the session where the intensity decreases. And at the end of the session, we ask them, about a new perspective. I always ask my patients to really complete the sentence, I am, whatever comes up at the end of the session. And really profound shifts have come up. People have said, for the first time, I feel safe. I feel like my body is my home, or
Wow.
I feel alive.
Wow.
And then we just allow them to be with that new perspective.
Thank you. This is very beautiful and very detailed explanation. Thank you so much. So would you say that DBR addresses something that's very core to the biology of the body? And by doing that, then other kinds of processing can come subsequently, like EMDR, bilateral stimulation, can come after DBR, or how would that be a compatible model with other kinds of therapies? What's your experience?
Yeah, so I work in a very integrative, using very integrative approaches. I use DBR, EMDR, sensory motor, somatic experiencing, neurofeedback, ego state work. And I think DBR really falls well within an integrative treatment model.
Great.
What's unique about DBR is that DBR really gets at the root of the trauma response.
Yeah.
And for some individuals, that's profoundly helpful. What I noticed treating some of my most severely ill patients with, chronic developmental trauma plus severe dissociative symptomatology. And what I found for a lot of them was that they had plateaued after years of treatment.
Wow.
And using DBR got almost all of them out of that plateau. So that's something that really excited me. And that's something why we started embarking on this study to really officially research deep brain reorienting.
That's really a reason to celebrate, because some methods just give the best of themselves, and then our clients need something else. And so grateful to you that you mentioned how you experience DBR helping your clients move away from that stagnated plateau, or where there's no more progress with other techniques. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Enrique.
Yes, and one last thing. So do you use it with, yeah, you're using it with your clients, but did you also researched it with your team, right? There was a study.
Yes. So, I started using DBR with my clients. That's why I saw that I could get a lot of them out of this plateau.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we began researching it. And we're currently doing a randomized controlled trial. We've published interim findings, which show that DBR has a strong effect size and is able to decrease all the symptom clusters of post-traumatic stress disorder, including reliving, avoidance, alterations in cognition and mood, and hyperarousal.
Yeah.
And we're just starting to look at the brain findings, and they're amazing. The brain really shifts, and we'll be publishing that over the next years.
That's so amazing. Thank you, Dr. Ruth. We are here also trying to bring this work to the Spanish-speaking community of clinicians, and your words and your witness and your experience with DBR are of incredible support for our undertaking. So I really want to thank you for this.
I'm so excited you're bringing it to the Spanish community, and I think people will find it extremely interesting and really help them with their clinical practice.
I hope so too. Thank you so much